The following program is paid for by EG Tax. All opinions or statements expressed on this program are solely those of EG Tax or its guests and do not reflect the opinions of News Radio 930 WBEN or Odyssey.
The following is paid programming.
It's time to talk taxes.
New friends, new opportunities, new partners. EG Tax.
It's Ask the Tax Lady with Esther Gulius and EG Tax on News Radio 930 WBEN. To reach Esther now, call 803-0930, toll free at 1-800-616-9236, and cell calls are free at star 930. And now, live from the WBEN studios, it's Esther Gulius.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Boy, this is the dog days of summer. You can't beat this for having lots of sun and warm weather and good swimming weather and good going to the lake weather. But anyway, I'm Esther Gulius, the tax lady, here to talk to you about your money, about your taxes, about your estates, and things of that nature. And I'm joined in studio with my buddy, Chris Fabian. Hey, Chris.
Hello, Esther.
So I heard you're having a party today.
Having family over. Yep. They're in from out of town to help celebrate my nephew's engagement. And so just going to have people over and have a good time.
That's fun.
Yes.
And of course, today, as I promised last week, we have our special guest in studio. If you're wanting some free legal advice, that doesn't happen very often, but we are very blessed to have my friend, my attorney, my longtime friend of both EG Tax and of me personally, Dennis Kitchen. Hey, Den, how are you doing?
Just fine, Esther. Glad to be here.
Well, I bet you'd rather be in your pool.
Oh, well, yeah, that too.
And I know Nancy keeps it like 1,000 degrees, so it's
Yeah.
got to be not refreshing.
She's home floating around as we speak.
I bet you she is. Well, anyway, over every time we have open lines, and of course it's open lines all the time, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone. You can text us at 716-8030930. People ask these things where we give them an answer, but we always say, you better go talk to your attorney. And so we have you, Dennis.
Thank you.
And of course, Dennis is in Clarence on Main Street, and if you want to get a hold of Dennis privately, his phone number is 631-5661. And by the way, I wanted to mention, don't forget our seminar coming up this fall on how to beat inflation, and Dennis will be one of our guest speakers. How to get control of your finances, all that kind of stuff. You can go to our website at egtax.com to register. Our tax school is coming up in October, and if you're somebody with a business, sole proprietorship, limited liability company, partnership, or 1120S, you have to do your BOI by 12/31 if it was a pre-existing business before 2024. If you started it in 2024, you only had 90 days to register without paying a penalty of $500 a day going to $10,000. So that's my little housekeeping stuff. Okay, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone. Now, the estate exclusion, Dennis, as I don't have to tell you, is $13.61 million on the federal, 6.94 on New York State. So who needs an estate? I mean, people talk about estates, but if that's the exclusion, do people have to worry about an estate?
Well, worrying about your estate or doing estate planning, I think everybody should be doing that. At least stop and think, saying, if I should die, who gets my stuff? Even people who say sometimes, well, I don't really have much of anything, so I'm not going to be bothering with that. I said, well, gee, in today's culture, you might be the victim of an accident. You might
That's
lie
true.
in a hospital bed for a month or something in excruciating pain or something. Somebody is going to perhaps be entitled to get something because of that. And if you don't have a will, if you haven't done some estate planning, then you might have a problem.
Hey, so it's my sister-in-law, her son passed away last year, and quite frankly, he had a divorce and all that kind of stuff, and he had a job, but he was kind of making ends meet. And she thought that he was totally broke. And while he was alive, he was totally broke. But after he passed away, his life insurance policy kicked in. And so she got, and she was the beneficiary, and so she got like over $100,000 that it was a sad thing. He was worth more dead than alive.
Sometimes that occurs, yes.
You know, because he was working at a major car manufacturer, and he had a life insurance policy. So it was really interesting that, you know, that, and thank God he had her listed as a beneficiary. Otherwise, it would have had to go by the way of, what, probate?
Well, yes, if it had nobody designated as a beneficiary, would have been part of his estate and governed by, well, who knows what. If he left a will, fine. But without a will, it would rely on just the rules of the state he lived in when he passed.
Right. Now, so now, what's the difference between a will and a trust?
Well, a trust in the simplest fashion is turning over assets to some person who's going to hold them for you, which is the trustee, and to dole them out if certain things happen. If you die, for example, the trust will continue on. So a trust can be useful in that regard. Also, a trust may be limited as to who it can pay out to. Unlike your bank account, which might be subject to what creditors want to collect on you from you, the trust may be limited and not allowed to do that. And if you're going to end up in a nursing home and would like to partake of Medicaid, which might pay the bill for you and preserve some of your assets because they're in a trust, that's certainly one way of doing it.
Okay. I'm Esther Galias, the tax lady, 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone. You can text us at 716-8030930. You might be floating around your pool, but you can still give us a jingle. And look it, we have Dennis Kitchen here. He's been an attorney for more than 10 years, right, Dan?
Yes, way more.
Way more than 10 years. And you can call and get some free legal advice, 8030930, star 930 on the cell phone. Who should be my executor?
Well, that's a good question, and it varies a lot.
I was going to say the person you hate the most.
Well, depending on how complex your estate can be or how difficult your situation is, or maybe it boils down to just how messy your house is that you're leaving, that may be the case. You should pick somebody who is trustworthy and diligent. It may be your firstborn. It may not. It
Right,
may
that's
be
true.
a friend. They're entitled to some compensation as an executor for the time and effort that they put in. So it's a decision that should be carefully made.
But is that part of what's done when you're doing your will?
Oh, yes. The will will designate who is an executor and very often will name an alternate executor. A typical will of married people is they name each other as their executor and then name the children as alternate executors or one of the children.
Is it good to have, because I've seen this, multiple?
Well, it doesn't hurt if you're leaving everything to your two children and they're both trustworthy and that sort of thing. You may it might be best to leave them as co-executors. You can leave as many executors you want, but obviously, if you're leaving it to a whole passel of people, that can be confusing and difficult.
Okay, so the executor is who's named for the will.
Yes,
But a trustee is the person that's taking care of a trust.
that's correct. And in
Right.
some family situations, the trustee and an executor might be the same person.
Right, right. I'm Esther Golias, the tax lady from EG Tax, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone. You can text us at 8030930. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with Dennis Kitchen on the other side. Hey, this is Esther Gullius, the tax lady from EG Tax, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone. Text us at 716-8030930. We have Dennis Kitchen, a wonderful attorney, brilliant kind of guy who can answer a lot of questions. Give us a jingle if you have any questions. And we do have Kevin holding Kevin from the islands. You must feel right at home right now, Kevin, with all the tropical breezes in Western New York.
It depends. 96 degrees in the shade is not quite my my cup of tea, for a better choice of words.
Yes.
Hey,
So
even an
what
island
can we
boy
do
can
for
say
you,
that.
Kev?
Hey, could you just repeat something about this seminar coming up? Did I hear you right that New York State is the Cumberland Empire State of New York is initiating something where even if I do my little business, let's say I want to mow a couple lawns or something for people and they're paying me, I don't consider that business, I need to register?
Well, that's not New York State. That's a federal law. If you are a limited liability company, subchapter S corporation, or partnership, if you're just a sole proprietor, you don't have to worry.
Okay, so what determines the difference between both, though? I just want to make sure that based upon
If you
how much
if
money
you
you're
got
making,
a limited liability company from New York State, if you contacted New York State, who then said, "Poof, you're a partnership. Poof, you're a limited liability company. You're an 1120S
And
corporation."
it cost you
Right. to
$1,500 to form it.
register. Right.
You're an
then,
LLC.
Then you're an LLC.
no, man. What date is this seminar? Because I don't want to hold up the phone lines. I
No,
have
the
so many valid questions.
seminar is for inflation fighting, help people with their budgets, looking at ways to maximize your income, tax-free, things of that nature. That's the seminar. But the BOI, the beneficial ownership interest, that we're doing has to be done by the end of the year. And so if you have that business, or Kevin, you think you might, call us, because we can contact New York State and find out.
Yeah, great. Yeah, okay. I'll do that.
Okay.
Hey, thanks again.
All right.
You guys
Thank
take
you,
care.
Kev,
Great.
for calling. All right, we have some text too, Chris.
We do. We got earlier this week, I found out that my taxes were filed and rejected. Can't get a hold of my tax preparer, won't return my emails or calls. Is this something EG Tax can fix?
Of course we can. Right? I mean, there's a reason why it rejected. And so one of the things about electronics, and Chris, you can piggyback on this, is that the return has to go in mathematically correct, with all I's dotted, all T's crossed. Everything has to be what the IRS has set up for the standard that they have in order to process a return. If something isn't right, if an EIN number was inputted incorrectly, Social Security number incorrect, anything of that nature, then they reject the return and they basically say, "We don't care you sent it in. We don't think you did. Fix it."
Right. And one of the big ones we saw this year was people looking for, or the IRS looking for your identity PIN, your 6-digit PIN to prove that it was you. And so that could be a very simple fix, but we would have to see, you would give us a call, make an appointment, bring in a copy of your return. We can input it, make sure it was done correctly, send it, and then we'll get to see what the reject
What
is.
the reject code is.
And
yeah.
then we can fix it going forward.
Right.
So yeah,
Right. Now we
definitely.
got another text. Right?
We do. Hi. Question. Is it better to go in person or online to file your taxes? Or does it matter?
You mean like, well, I mean, we do returns electronically in person. You can drop it off. You can send your information in electronically. We do a full interview over the phone. So it doesn't, for quality, it should make no difference at all if you have an interview. If you don't have an interview, then there have to be questions that weren't asked, and so it's possible that the return isn't done as correctly as it can be.
Right. So yeah, like if he's talking or she talking online, like do it yourself. I mean, there's the old saying,
Garbage in, garbage out.
exactly. If you don't know what you're doing, your tax return's probably not done right.
Right. I mean, it'll be mathematically correct if you use software, but it may not be in theory correct. In other words, you might have missed a credit, a deduction, and if you missed it, they don't call you up and say, gee, we really think you should have itemized. How come you didn't? They just let you, it's already mathematically correct, and they let it go by.
And I hate to say it, but we saw this week what AI did to the medical field, the banking field, the airlines, right? It
Yep.
shut them down.
Absolutely correct.
So who knows what could happen to your tax return? And that's, going back to the previous text about the reject, we've seen that too, where they never got that email that their return rejected, and they did it themselves through an online software.
and they
So-
didn't know what to do.
Yep.
And everything's great if there's no hitches. The trouble is if there's a glitch, a hitch, and you don't know what to do, then you could just be sitting there waiting for a refund that's never going to come.
Right.
Right? I'm Esther Golias, the tax lady from EG Tax, 8030930. 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone. Text us at 716-8030930. We have Dennis Kitchen, an attorney specializing in wills, estates, trusts, real estate. He is a knowledgeable gentleman, been our company's attorney for many years, and we're so thankful that he's here on this beautiful day. So if you have any questions, okay, Dennis, should I give away my house to my kids right now?
Well, it may be different for each person, but it is a technique that we use quite often. If you are in your forever house, the one you're going to keep, the last one you're going to have, you're not going to sell it and downsize and that sort of thing, you might want to consider transferring your house to your children and retaining a life estate.
And we talk about that all the time. That's so smart. Explain what that is, if you would.
Well, what you do is you sign a deed. It transfers your house to your kids, but they only get a remainder interest. You retain a life estate, which means as long as you are living or either one of you are living, then you are the owners of the property. When the last person of the couple to die, then it becomes automatically your kids. And the house doesn't have to be part of the probate process, which might save a few bucks there, but it becomes automatic.
And then it gets a stepped-up basis, right?
Yes, because it occurred as a result of a death. And it's there are some cautions there. If one of your kids is perhaps has some difficult credit problems or maybe is facing a divorce or something like that, you may not want to take this step. But assuming things are good with your kids, you should consider this.
All right, that's great.
Yeah. How hard is it? Because some of our advice we give people once it is in a life estate, and like you said, your forever home, well, they decide 15 years later, it's not my forever home.
Yes.
How hard is it to take the life estate away?
The problem with it then is that if they go ahead and sell, they're going to, of course, have to have the kids also be signing. And for the kids, they're going to probably have a
Big
gain,
tax.
a capital gain that they're going to have to pay taxes on. Right. So one way to do it, of course, is to have the kids give the property back to the parents and then let the parents go ahead with their sale.
Right, and as long as the parents lived there 2 out of the last 5 years, then parents that are selling their personal residence, and if it's a married couple, up to $500,000 of the gain is tax-free.
Yes.
But if not, if they keep it in that life estate and sell the house, then, like you said, Dennis, the kids end up paying taxes. So that should be a good motivation for the kids to want to put the house back in the parents' name.
Yes, that's correct.
However, then the 5-year look back is messed up, right?
Well, the 5-year look back would be messed up. That is a consideration. So you have to be still in pretty good health at that point and look at 5 years of reasonably good health to be able to handle that. Yeah.
All right, great. All right, we got Mike Holding. Hey, Mike, how can we help you, sir?
Hey, how you doing, Esther? It's nice talking to you. I have a double question here. One thing is, I found out this year that I've been paying extra taxes and not taking the deduction. And what happened in 2019, I called this New York State, and one of their agents told me, no, this is not, you have to pay full tax on it. Finding out that I was exempt from my pensions for the first $20,000. Now, my question is, how far can I go back under statute of limitation with that? And a warning to everybody, do not listen totally to these tax people.
Chris, why don't you tell them?
Sure. You can go back to 2020 and do an amended return for 2020, 2021, 22, and 23. 2020 will expire at the end of April, or April 15th this in 2025. So you want to get that one done sooner, especially since, unfortunately, that one has to go in paper.
Right.
Oh,
And the other
yes,
thing,
I
I'm
see
assuming
now.
this is, you aren't retired on a New York State or public pension, right?
No, I'm private pension.
And you are
Uh,
over the age of 59 and a half.
Yes, I'm getting 70 years old.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I just wanted to add another question. If the lawyer doesn't know, I have a house in Florida and I have a house in New York. And what happened? I signed my wife to the house in New York. It's in her name. I put claim deeded it from my name to her house to her name, which is free and clear. Is she able to get a star exemption on the house?
Okay, you know what we're going to do, Dennis?
Yes.
Hang on. And we have to take a break for the news, but we're going to give Mike's answer on the other side.
We're going to put you on
Esther-
hold, Mike.
Yeah, I'm Esther Gilius, the tax lady, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on his cell phone. Text us 716-8030930. Dennis will answer on the other side. We'll see you on the other side of the news. Hey, this is Esther Gilius, the tax lady. To us, you are family. And we're joined in studio with Christopher Fabian and our attorney, Dennis Kitchen. 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on his cell phone. Text us at 716-8030930. Great opportunity if you've been wondering about estates, trusts, pensions, bankruptcies. I mean, we have absolutely a great expert here in the studio, and we'll go back to, I think it was Mike, right? We have Mike Holding.
Yes.
Mike, ask your question again so we can refresh people's memory.
Okay, what it is, I am no longer, yes, I'm still on a deed on my house in New York. My wife is on a deed now because I quit claim the deed and put her name on it, which the house has been free and clear for the last 30 years. So my question is, of course, I own a house in Florida, and I'm taking tax, deductions for that house. Can my wife take a star exemption for a house in New York since she's part owner?
All right, guys?
Okay, got a follow-up question for you so Dennis knows all the facts. Do you guys are you a Florida resident?
Yes, I am.
Is your wife a Florida resident or is she a New York resident?
New York resident.
Do you file a joint return with New York State?
I've filed this year just a partial residency for New York, so I'm most of the time in Florida, so my time is spent more than 6 months in Florida.
Right, but did your wife file a married filing separate
My wife,
return?
no, we don't file separate, but the thing is with the star exemption, I don't know if
No, but these are very important questions, Mike. Do you and your wife file a joint New York return?
Yes, this past year for 20.
All right. So
we did.
you really can't have your cake and eat it too. Dennis, why don't you take this issue if you have it?
Well, it sounds like the way you've structured things, you are living separate and apart, but without necessarily a separation agreement or any legal separation or that sort of thing. But the technical rule of whether or not you can file a joint return. I defer back to Esther and Chris
yeah.
for that one. But in terms of being able to take your, the star exemption, that would seem to apply if it's in her name and if it's her residence. She should be eligible for the star. Right?
Chris, what do you
Well,
think?
I would think, because I do know New York State looks at the tax returns to verify
Right.
income. So if you're filing a joint return and you are claiming a homestead in Florida and she's trying to claim the star tax in New York may renege and say, wait a minute, you can't have both.
Right.
Well, except there'll be nothing in the New York return that will refer to his.
Well, if he's
his Florida
filing a
residence.
joint New York
But they
IT-201,
check the
that
two,
would-
Dennis. In other words, Florida does not want to give you the homestead exemption if you're also getting the star exemption in New York. You have to decide which it is. And when he filed a joint return with his wife, a resident return,
But he's not an owner of any house
I know,
in
but
New
you know
York.
what they'll do is they'll say you're double dipping. Because I've seen that many times where somebody puts the title in the wife's name, but everything in their will would say that they go 50-50. And there's somebody in Florida taking the homestead exemption. They basically will contact you at some point in time and say either or, because it's wherever you have the closer relationship. Well, when he filed a joint return, resident joint return, he's saying he's a resident of New York State, right, Chris?
Yep. Yep.
I mean, he's
Plus-
he's saying he's a resident of Florida, but when he filed a New York return resident, you can't be a resident of two places.
Well,
Esther, can I
Yeah.
intervene with this? I basically did a partial residency for New York.
How?
So there's a.
I mean,
form
you
that
can't
says-
be.
We know-
You aren't a part. You didn't file a joint return then. If you're a part
No,
your
no,
resident, it
I'm-
meant that you did your own return.
what if he's a Florida resident with some income in New York?
Well, then he would file as a non-resident. He would have. His wife would have filed as a resident, married separate, and he would have filed as a non-resident, married separate.
But they couldn't do joint.
because he's not a resident.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know what? For the next year, I will just file separate returns, because the fact is, she's only showing an income of $12,000 a year.
Okay. And from what? From Social Security or a pension?
For Social Security.
That's tax-free in New York State.
Yeah.
I mean, do you guys even have to file a New York return?
May not have enough
Yeah, I
taxable
mean,
income.
it sounds like you
Yeah,
shouldn't
but
have
my
done a
own
return at
income
all.
is- Yeah, my income is like $55,000-$60,000.
Okay, but is it from a pension?
Yeah, yes.
Are you a resident of Florida?
You switched your license
If you
and
really
everything.
are a resident of Florida, then you don't file a New York State return.
Right,
Yes,
but he moved in 2023, I believe.
Did you move in 2023?
So I filed.
When did you move, Mike, to Florida?
November of 23.
Oh, okay. Then you were your New York resident. And yes, you're not
yes,
retired on a government pension, are you?
No. These are all private sector pensions.
Okay, so of the 60, how much is Social Security?
Social Security for me is about $38,000.
All right, so most of that money that you got then was from Social Security.
Right. And
And
then
the
I-
rest of it is your exemption. Most of it would be your exemption on your
about
pension. And
26,000
then with your
I would-
standard deduction, you don't owe any New York State taxes at all.
No, I was been very frugal, so I do have my 401s and IRAs. Which
Why
are
don't you give us a
over
jingle
500,000.
Monday, Mike, and we'll look into this more deeply and do some researching to make sure the two of you maybe don't even have to file New York State, don't have to pay New
Yeah.
York State taxes. So, okay?
that would be such a shame in that. I like giving Kathy extra money.
I know,
God bless
but
you.
you want to do it right, you know?
Esther, thank you so much.
All right,
for
thanks,
being in
Mike.
my
Have a
corner.
great day.
Thank you.
I'm Esther Golias, the tax lady, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone. You can text us at 716-8030930. Hey, Dennis, so, and by the way, we have Dennis Kitchen here, a wonderful, experienced attorney who knows the ins and outs of all the laws. Give us a jingle, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone. The last week we had somebody that's called and said, what's the difference between POD and a beneficiary? Is there, for all intents and purposes, much of a difference, Den?
There really isn't. POD, of course, is a feature that's relatively new in New York, been around in other states for longer. You can put another person's name on a bank account, which makes them a co-owner, or you can simply designate them as pay on death or transfer on death, POD or TOD, same thing. And it means that they don't own the bank account. But if something happens to you and you're gone, that bank account then belongs to the person named as the POD beneficiary.
Just like if it was a beneficiary, right?
Right.
And both of these situations, that's what happened last week. It was a question. You don't have to go through probate.
Right.
Okay, that's cool. All right, we got Carolyn holding. Hi, Carolyn. How can we help you, ma'am?
Wow, Esther, Dennis,
Yeah.
I am so thrilled to follow up that incredibly convoluted answer to Mike. I acknowledge your expertise, you and Dennis, in all of the questions that come through. My comment is simply a thank you. Christopher, I called you the other day, and here it is. Esther, you promote that you are family, and you are family. And you spoke to me about a month ago. You were incredibly helpful.
Oh,
You even suggested that I call Dennis, and I did, and he was just as wonderful. Well, not quite as.
Well, we gush because we're ladies.
Yeah,
I'm a lady,
right,
and so I
right.
can gush legally,
Okay.
right?
Okay, but here is my final statement. I picked out a Jackie Lawson e-card to thank you, Esther. I picked out a Jackie Lawson e-card to thank you, Dennis. And Christopher, you were supposed to tell Esther that I sent it.
I did. And
Esther, check your email.
Well, I just got it.
Well, I sent it on the 24th. But,
Well, I mean,
that's wonderful.
It's
That's
interesting.
wonderful.
Just before the show, I said to Chris,
know,
I
sent it
got
just
that
before
card.
I sent it just before the show because nothing happened on the 24th. And Dennis, I sent yours just before the show. I have a knack for good timing, and good timing also requires that I forget me thanking all of you, even though you deserve it. Kathy in Fredonia used to do taxes for me with y'all, and then I think she retired. And then Mark Newton,
Right.
I don't know what he thinks about me, but he's wonderful about dealing with me. Even at the last minute, he just comes through and says, guess what? You owe this or you don't owe that. He's marvelous. The whole family is marvelous.
Thank you so much. Well, and like I said, Chris said, "Where's the car?" I couldn't. We even looked into my history. I couldn't find it. But just before the show, I emailed Chris the card.
And
Wonderful.
I got mine just before the show.
There we go.
Well,
thank you very, very much. It's lovely that
thank
that we made you happy, and that's the best thing I can think of. You didn't have to get us anything, though.
But
All right.
Esther,
Thank you,
Esther,
my dear. Yes, ma'am.
Esther, it's
Yes.
time to play We Are Family.
It almost is.
That's up to my guy in Master Control.
Okay,
Right?
thank you.
All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
a lot. I'm Esther Golias, the tax lady from EG Tax, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone. You can text us at 716-8030930. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back on the other side. Hey, to us, you are family, and that was awfully nice, Carol, to say those nice things about us. I mean, we just really want to help. It can be so daunting to come up with some kind of a problem, and you don't know who to trust, and you can't get a hold of anybody. You know, it's just unbelievable. So we actually answer phones, right?
Yes.
We actually talk to people, and Dennis, I know that's how you are too. You're accessible, right?
Yes, reachable.
Okay, back to Dennis Kitchen. He's our special guest. Dennis Kitchen, his phone number, by the way, is 631-5661. He's on Main Street in Clarence. If you're looking for a wonderful attorney with lots of experience, ethical man, Dennis would be your person, 631-5661. Let me ask you this, Den, can you disinherit somebody in the family?
Well, yes and no. And the no part is your spouse. You can't disinherit your spouse.
Is that true?
That's right.
Like during an argument, you can't say, and I'm not going to leave you any.
You're out of the will. Yeah, right. No. See, first of all, there's certain property that transfers automatically, regardless of what your will says, and it's usually a car, that sort of thing. And, of course, any joint property is going to be left to them.
But how about your kids?
Well,
I mean, what if you have a kid that never came to see you? You're on your deathbed. You've been saying to them, Johnny, why don't you come see me? And they never come. And so, can you disinherit them?
Absolutely.
And they can't take you to court. Or they can't take your estate to court.
Well, of course, anybody can take anybody to court for something or other. But if there's a good reason for it, or there's not any reason to set aside the will, or claim that the person didn't know what they were doing when they made the will, then that child is stuck with it. Sometimes we write a will and we put something in the will. There's the fellow who said to my nephew Johnny, who I promised to remember in my will, "Hi there, Johnny." But we put in something that just says,
hi there, Johnny. You mean that's what they?
Yeah,
that's what he.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I got it.
You can say to my child Ralph, I do not make any provision intentionally. Do not make any provision.
I see.
In this
Is that
will.
something that would be better spelled out in a will like that?
Well, sometimes it is, if the accusation might be that, well, he just forgot about me. He would have included me, included all the rest of the kids, and that sort of thing, and you could make that argument, but you can't make it if somebody says, no, I specifically decided I wasn't going to leave you anything.
Wow.
And sometimes we don't leave our kids something. Well, maybe because they're already well off. They don't need the money. We leave it to the person who
But there can
needs
be a
the
lot
money.
of hurt feelings, though, can't there?
Well, there might be, and sometimes that's what rules in person making a will. Oh, I must give everybody an equal amount.
Equal share,
Yeah,
right?
and but sometimes that's not equitable. Okay, equal isn't necessarily equitable. So think about it.
All right. I'm Esther Galice, the tax lady, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone, and we have Chris from Kenmore Holding. Hi, Chris. How can we help you?
Good afternoon. My wife is turning 62 in October. She has not worked since 2014 because of a car accident. There's no lawsuit or collecting any disability or any kind. And I was wondering if she's eligible to take the early collection on Social Security.
So, Dennis, can you speak to that?
Well, if she's 62, she should be eligible, and she should call up, make the appointment with Social Security. That's sitting down then with somebody who's capable of calculating things and giving her a specific answer. That's
No,
the
it would
necessary part.
at 62, wouldn't the distribution be based upon her Social Security
Yes.
contribution?
Yeah.
Then once he starts collecting, she could get half of his, correct?
I believe that's how it is. I don't try and claim to be an expert on Social Security because it's a little like looking at a crystal ball. You really need to talk with
Right,
Social
and
Security.
they're wonderful. I will
They
tell you,
are.
Chris. You can call Social Security, and they will endeavor to help you sort everything out. So,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously, collecting at 62 would be something because you're obviously not collecting, right?
Yes, I'm on disability and comp for life.
Right. So you already are
Oh,
collecting.
you're already getting it, yeah.
So then she'd
Yes,
be
I am.
entitled to half of your Social Security.
Whichever is higher, hers
Right.
or yours.
Right.
Okay.
Okay? All right, thanks, Chris.
you
I'm
very
Esther
much.
Galias, the tax lady from EG Tax, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 and a cell phone. So, kind of switching gears a little bit, a lot of times you help people with debt situations. And I've told the story before. Not everybody that has bad credit is due to the fact that they're deadbeats, right?
Correct. Oh, yeah.
My own sister had hundreds and hundreds, this is 30, 40 years ago, of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of medical expenses. She didn't have Medicaid, and they never, ever could pay it. Never. You know, her husband was a self-employed contractor. And I suggested to them to do a bankruptcy. And her husband, being a very ethical gentleman, said, no, I can't do that to my creditors. So they went, I would say, 25 years with this debt hanging around their neck. They couldn't get new cars. They couldn't buy a house. Finally, I did convince him to do a bankruptcy. Then, when they did the bankruptcy, their credit was restored. They got a house, a car, and everything was like miraculous. And you can reassign on your debt, can't you,
Yes.
Dennis?
Yes, and the term "fresh start" is a very real term in bankruptcy. I frequently hear the judge in the bankruptcy court talk about saying, "Well, look, these people need a fresh start," and that's what a bankruptcy will give you. Instead of living with a debt that lasts sometimes a couple of decades, and judgments against them and not being able to do things, bankruptcy will clear them up.
And I think that's what people don't understand is when you have bad credit because you're not paying your bills, that's equally as bad or very close to equal as doing a bankruptcy. The difference being, like in my sister's case, for 25 years they had this bad credit follow them wherever they went. As soon as they did the bankruptcy, the bad credit went away.
That's a shame because on your credit report and everything, if you have a bankruptcy, it goes on the credit report, yes, but it comes off 10 years later. So you don't have to put up the thing with the thing for 25 years of bad credit and all the effects. You might just put up with it having had a bankruptcy in your background, but 10 years later it comes off, and by then you've had a chance to rebuild your credit.
Now, not everybody would qualify for a bankruptcy either. Isn't there very strict rules?
Well,
like who can do a bankruptcy?
Most everybody can do a bankruptcy of some sort, but the problem is sometimes people have assets that they can't exempt. In other words, they can't keep out of the bankruptcy, and they end up losing some of those assets. But there's a significant exemption that one gets for a house. It's about $90,000 of equity in your house that you can preserve in a bankruptcy. And if there's a couple, they can preserve $180,000 if they own a house jointly. With a car, it's about $5,000. And furniture, clothing, those are exempt, and a number of other things are exempt. So I should say that when I do a typical bankruptcy for people, they are usually what we call no-asset bankruptcies. Not that you don't have any assets, but you don't have any assets that are subject to being taken by the trustee and sold.
I gotcha. So, I mean, and so many times people think, oh, you just talk about bankruptcy and those deadbeats ought to work. Well, if you're a deadbeat, that's one thing. But if you're really somebody that's had a problem, and specifically I can think of medical problems,
Yes.
because those bills
Oh, they're
run up
overwhelming.
really quick. You know, if that's the situation, you also help people negotiate their debt down too, don't you?
Yes, and if a person just has one single debt and some limited assets, that's always one of the alternatives we look at. Perhaps we can negotiate this down. Perhaps we can come up with a payment plan, or perhaps they will take a lump sum and settle the whole thing. It doesn't necessarily require bankruptcy in each case, but you need to have an attorney look at things, evaluate it, and be able to give you some choices that you can
Right.
meaningfully consider.
Right, right. So anyway, that's another thing that I know that you've helped many people with, either negotiating out of credit debt that they had, or the bankruptcy. Now, the interesting thing is, though, debt forgiveness, unless you're insolvent, is taxable, whereas bankruptcy is not.
That's right. And so you've got to, yeah, if you went bankrupt, then
That's tax-free.
that's tax-free. Otherwise, you've got to prove that you were insolvent, and that's why you.
And that's
yeah.
the only way to make the debt forgiveness not be taxable. And a lot of times people aren't aware of that. Like sometimes people will hand me, and I'm sure that's the same with you, Chris.
Yes.
They'll hand me that slip for debt cancellation, and I'll think, Did you know this was? Do you own a home? Yes, I do. How much is it worth? $400,000. How much is your mortgage? $80,000. Well, this is going to be taxable, and nobody tells people that debt forgiveness is potentially taxable.
Right. And some people are embarrassed to even talk about bankruptcy and stuff, because I know I'll ask people, could you have filed bankruptcy? Well, what does that have to do with anything?
Right.
And it's, well, I'm trying to see if you got to pay tax or not pay tax. And if you did consult a lawyer, you may have already filled out an asset worksheet that shows you were insolvent.
Absolutely. Well, Dennis, I guess you get to go back into your backyard and float around the rest of the afternoon.
Yes.
Well, I really, really appreciate you being our special guest. If you need help with your wills, estates, trusts, debt cancellation, bankruptcy, Dennis is a great, ethical, wonderful attorney. Usually they don't use those kind of things with attorneys, but Dennis is one of them. He's on Main Street in Clarence, 631-5661. It's Dennis Kitchen, just like the room. Until next week, I'm Esther Gilius, the tax lady from EG Tax. Christopher's going to go have a party. Dennis is going to float in the pool, and I'm going to go get my hair dyed. So until next week, I'm Esther Gilius, the tax lady. If you need the best tax help, give EG Tax a call at egtax.com. Thanks for listening.
The previous program was paid for by EG Tax.